Welcome to the Badlands, a place I don't think I or anyone I'm going to talk to expected to be. My name is Jared, and for the last 9 months, I've been an out-of-work ad agency senior suit. My last role was the Regional Client Service Director at Grey Singapore, delivering work around Southeast Asia and India. I returned to London last year, fully imagining I'd been in another agency fairly quickly, as had been the case over the last 2 decades, but not so much this time. So I found myself wandering the Badlands. In these 9 months, I've noticed a few odd things in our industry, and I've also noticed a surprising amount of ex-colleagues and clients all in a similar position to me. So I thought it might be helpful and maybe interesting to talk to some of these people, to see how they're doing, discover their experiences, understand what they're looking for, and maybe shine a light on them and their talents. But most importantly, check in with them, as it's a lonely experience being in the Badlands. So please welcome Steve Price. Steve is a highly experienced creative director and design director. Worked at most major agencies and design studios, including a period in Southeast Asia. But like many creatives, he's been in the Badlands for way longer than he expected. We've actually worked at some of the same agencies, but never at the same time. I came across him via an amazing video he posted on LinkedIn recently, beautifully bemoaning the state of the creative industry, with a real special emphasis on the ghosting phenomenon that's going on at the moment. So today we'll talk about that video and others he's put out, and his time in the Badlands. So please welcome Steve Price. Steve, how the hell are you?
I am very well, thank you, sir. I have, I'm sitting comfortably. I'm primed, ready with water and a suitable beer.
Well, I must say to all my listeners, this is the first one we've done at night. I say night, it's 8-ish, but Gin and Tonics are kind of making the podcast a little bit fun, a bit more fun. So
yeah, well, I had a gin and tonic before I had the beer before we started talking, so
okay.
I'm already laced.
So there's a strong chance I'll have to do some beeps and bleeps of names, and
No,
I might have to do some quality editing after this. But so look, I'm glad you're okay, and I appreciate you taking the time. We've spoken offline a couple of times and exchanged a lot of emails, and again, just I noticed and I saw you on LinkedIn as I touched on my intro, but we'll get into that because you're clearly doing your own things in this period of time, which is pretty shitty for the creative industry as a whole, and kind of creatives and art directors, designers, and freelancers, you're all kind of weirdly in a similar position in that the kind of industry at the moment's not forthcoming with its kind of flow of roles and gigs and projects that you guys have been used to for the last 10, 15, 20 years, and a bit longer in your case. So I think before we get into all of that, it's worth you giving my millions of listeners your kind of career summary, what you've been doing and where you were most recently.
So I have, I can't call myself a founder because I didn't discover land, but I am the owner of Plan B Studio, which is a design and branding agency, I guess, which I set up in 2001. Ironically, 6 months after the dot-com crash happened, because the bottom fell out the market then as well. For anyone old enough to remember that, some of the students I work with at the moment weren't even born, which makes me feel terribly old. But I, having been made redundant twice in 6 months, I came up with this brilliant idea that can I swear?
You can do what you want, mate.
Am I allowed to swear?
Oh,
okay, good. I thought. Okay, good. I should have checked before we started recording, but I decided that, fuck that. If I'm going to be out of work again, it'll be my fault. So I set up Plan B Studio, principally to have a name and feeling like I was a bit grown up when I was 24, to have something that I could work that wasn't my own name, and also to provide me with the flexibility to kind of go and work or do whatever I wanted, which hasn't always been the case. Sometimes, needs must and all that. But during the last 23 years that I've been running that, I have quite often, been approached by and worked at various agencies, like Pope London and BBH for a while, and Rehab Studio and Unit 9 and Grey in London. Did about 15 months there, and then most recently last year, I was working with. I was approached by an American agency that was setting up a UK wing of their establishment in the UK. So I spent about 8 months with them, and then I finished that project, or I finished my part of that project for loads of reasons I won't bore everybody with. In September last year, and thought, do you know what? I've had a good run. I might take a month off, and didn't really pay any attention to anything, right, and relaxed a little bit. And I didn't really have much. I had an inkling, but I didn't really care about the industry and the state it was in that I didn't know about. And it kind of got to about November time, and I thought, do you know what? I haven't had any new projects come in, which is weird because I'm very used to having at least one or two things floating around or proposals that I've got to work on. And kind of dawned on me late in the day that actually there was a kind of dearth of activity and a lack of work and actually a lack of response and a complete total blackout on communication with lots of people, not everyone, but lots of people who really should know better. And so my excuses to my accountant got worse because December I was like, look, it's Christmas, no one's working. Then January came, I was like, January's a dead month, and then of course it gets to February, March, and it's like new budgets. I don't fucking know. And then it's and all of a sudden it's nearly July, for God's sake. It's been interesting.
And during before that, and look, I think, my experience was we decided to move back to London as a family. My wife was headhunted to come back here, and I didn't even think twice about looking into the state of the industry. And with hindsight, it's fucking stupid, because when I came back and spoke to my recruiter, she was a bit car salesman-y, like, oh, like a garage owner, like, oh, I'm not sure. And it was clear then that there's something was weirdly going on. I guess before that, how had a lot of your business come about in the past? Was it just through your network and connections and kind of repeat business? And because there's clearly there's been I've spoke to contractors and kind of permalancers who've operated in that work. I put out an amazing episode with Katrina Vines, who's been a permalancer. She's worked at places everywhere. A year, 18 months, never not happened in 25 years. And then last year, just the phone stopped ringing. And it's a huge shock when that's the first time that happened. Is it, apart from the .com crash, is this the first time that this level of kind of quietness has happened?
Yes and no. I mean, so apart from, I worked in the States for a while. I've worked, as you mentioned, I've worked in Southeast Asia. And actually that was, we were as a family then, when my son was about 3, we were going to move to Malaysia. And that's why I was out there. I had a job that I went to at a branding agency. And of course the financial crash happened. And literally, like, everything got shut off within a matter of days, and clients were pulling their work out of the agency I was working in, and so I came back to London, and my son's mother, my former partner, was half Malaysian, half Norwegian. So we're like, well, look, our backup plan was to go to Norway. So I ended up living in Norway on and off for about 8 years, and. Wow. And so just as the financial crash was, it always takes about 12 months, I find, to like really hit the creative industries. And although it was very apparent that, there was a bit of a problem everywhere, particularly in the UK, I was kind of in Norway, which was kind of sheltered from it in a way. Yeah. But I was in a completely new land. I didn't really know anyone. I didn't have any network. And so it took. There was a period, but I in my head, if it was longer than 2 months or I had no work, I'd be very surprised. So this has been, I think, definitely the worst time that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, and clearly from you're in the creative side of things, and I know from our conversations offline, you're talking to other creatives, designers, copywriters, you name it. There's a lot of freelancers in a similar position, right? It's
Yeah.
because I think I've talked about it with other people. You kind of go through this. Well, is it me? It's a natural human reaction. You just think, is it me? I've mentioned before, I felt blacklisted at one point. I was a bit like, I don't understand what I've done. I only left for 4 years. I didn't know that was against the rules in the London ad world. But you realize then, enough conversations and, doing a bit of investigative work. It's not necessarily just you. It's that there's a larger thing at play here. And you kind of, you have to go through that.
I mean, I've always, most of the time, I would say about 90% of the time since I set up Plan B Studio, apart from when I've worked with other companies, I've always had my own clients. And particularly, I tell you, there were two things last year that at the time I didn't think much of, but it made sense. The first one was back in July last year. I brought a creative team in who were about the same age, if not a bit older than me, into the agency I was working with to work on a project. And it didn't dawn on me at the time, but they said to me, "We haven't worked for 6 months." So that would have been January, February last year. And when I left there, I remember I had a client. So I still had, past tense, quite a few clients in Norway, and I had a call with one of them in October last year, thinking, "Oh well, that chunk of work we were going to start, that will start, so that's fine." And I had a call with them, and they were having trouble securing the funding, and they were like, "Yeah, well, we have." I won't do the accent. But like, "Yeah, we have a cost of living crisis going on here as well." And I was like, and it was like, it wasn't a penny dropping. It was like an acne, like fucking iron off. Yeah, it was like a Roadrunner moment, and I went straight through the cliff, down through the road into hell, and went. And I remember I came off that call, and I rang my accountant. I was like, Houston, I think we have a problem. And he's like, why? And I went, Norway. And I've never, as long as I've been working with Norwegian companies and clients, money's never been an issue. It's not to say that they'd just throw anything at you, but I've never had that. And so I came off that and went, oh, shit. And so, yeah, I guess as of the start of this year, I started tapping up like old agencies that I'd worked at, or, people that I knew, even just to get, I say even, like to go back and do freelance work. And there was a deathly silence came the reply, sir.
Yeah, well, look, I think the deathly silence is, I think, where the horror is attached when you're on your own at home. You just, I think for me, that was, there was a period of time around February, March where it just felt like a horror movie, and it was just that silent moment before you just about to get killed. Like, the silence is what is awful in this process. It's like, I've mentioned it before. I don't mind being told I don't have the job, or I don't mind being told it's on hold, or I don't mind being told it's gone internal, although I do mind that. But no communication is the hardest part of this, I think. And I think when I saw your video that you put on LinkedIn, I think you posted it in other areas, being down with the kids, but I saw it on LinkedIn. I was just like, well, fuck me, this guy's just saying all the things I daren't quite say just yet on my episodes with these people that I'm talking to, because I know it hit a chord with a lot of people. And when I started my conversations, there was quite a few people said, "Hey, you need to speak to Steve, because he's equally on a bit of a tearing this thing up, because it's clearly there's a humanity issue at the moment. There's a bit of a people issue. There's a bit of a how you treat people." And so when I watched your video, I was just like, "Fuck, it's so right." And it made me laugh slightly. I was just thinking, he did it from the beach and it looked really nice, but you called it out at the end. I was like, oh, thank God he's called it out at the end. But it's still, still landed.
I think I kind of did a follow-up, I think, the next day, because, and I'll caveat on here as well, that whilst there is no excuse for treating people like shit and not communicating with them, it is an extremely, I would say, an extremely difficult time for everyone. So I think people, and I know from speaking to people who are in jobs, who, varying degrees of hatred for that job. I actually had a friend of mine who's a group creative director about a month or so ago. flirting with the idea of leaving. And I was like, have you got something new to like go to? And he's like, no. And I was like, then fucking stay where you are.
Yeah.
Do not, unless you have a signed contract for a new job, don't leave, because there is nothing going on at the moment. And I think I wanted just to caveat, that it is really difficult. The few and far between good recruiters that I like and speak to, are having an equally tough time of it. And people that are in jobs, agencies are having to do even more work because they've had to make redundancies. So everybody's under pressure to do even more, deliver more, less time, less money. Clients basically have an autonomy over potentially just saying, well, we don't have to pay for that, or, being a bit belligerent because they know that agency cannot afford to lose them. So there are some extenuating circumstances that I think those people might justify for not being able to, communicate as with the frequency that those on the outside would like. But that said, agencies aren't usually one-man bands. There are usually lots of people. There are usually HR departments. There are people whose job it is to communicate, and I find it offensive that for an industry that prides itself largely on communicating, whatever that is, whether it's advertising or branding or whatever it might be, that they've shown some of their true colors, and B, that there is also nobody wants to speak the truth because they don't want to either be seen as a troublemaker. I've had shitloads of people contacting me directly, privately, saying, "Oh, I didn't even want to comment on that in case a recruiter sees it." Right. I've had business leaders who I know and love and respect for what they do have messaged me privately on various social channels to say, "Yeah, I've seen your thing. Like, we're having a shit time of it." But I don't expect them to go onto LinkedIn and talk about how bad it is from a business point of view, because they don't want to show the weakness. But they're without people talking about it, and I don't subscribe to any of the trade magazines like Campaign or Adweek or any of those magazines because they're all shit and they're all owned by the same kind of companies, and it's all money for the old rope. Like the same company that owns Cannes owns all of the media that's there. I mean, it's fucking sickening. Like, it's sycophantic is what it is. But I won't get into that now. But I think for individuals and particularly the media, whether they picked up on it, whether anybody's writing about it, there are worse things in the world going on at the moment. We all know that, but nobody was really talking about it. And I just reached a point where I was like, you know what, fuck this. I didn't actually want to go on holiday. And that sounds terribly, proper first world problem, right? But I felt terrible being on holiday because, I've had to take a personal loan, private loan off my parents. If I'm being completely honest, that's the only reason I'm actually still sitting here talking, because, that's racking up, and they're not in a position where they can do that forever. And so there was me on a, beautiful morning in Mallorca, and I knew I was going to do stuff when I went away anyway, but I just felt like, you know what, if I don't talk about it, then it's inside my head, and it might as well be out of my head. And it landed with, I didn't know whether it would. I didn't really care if it landed or not, but it resonated with an awful lot of people, and I've replied to and made sure that I've spoken to as many of them as I can, and I've been helping some of them to get in touch or connect them with people that may or may not be able to help them now or in the future.
Yeah, look, it's Jesus, sorry. The point you were making about the people who are working at the moment, 100%. They kind of, I know from a couple of friends who are in town working at various agencies, exactly what you said, like lean teams, twice as much to do, deliverables through the roof, no let up, just this. And like you say, there's such fear attached to it all imploding. It's understand, and you're right. This idea of, on the outside, you feel like, well, why didn't this person reply to me? Because they've probably got 300 people to reply to. So I understand it, but there are some times where there's no excuse. I mean, the notion of expecting a personal contact back when you've applied to something randomly, I think that's overreaching, right? But I think I've heard of people and personal experience actually talking to people, having interviews, and then not hearing anything, which I'm just a bit like, well, that's just rude. But it seems to be okay, and I'm a bit like, well, you've just added yourself to my list of places I probably don't want to work. Regardless of how bad it is, I'd rather go work in Waitrose than work there because you're a bunch of idiots, you know.
I have a growing list of. In fact, I've actually blocked and unlinked myself from a lot of people who I think should know better. And I think I said I think I touched on it in the video. But if you are, doesn't matter what size company you are, if you are looking for a particular skill set, a person or people, and you are relying on a post that you put on LinkedIn, it's always been a kind of a bit of a dump fest. Like, you know, it's a proper pile-on, but ever more so now. Or you're advertising and you're using some shitty like LinkedIn or Glassdoor or wherever you're promoting that, pushing that job. If you are not set up properly to manage what will be a deluge of applicants now, then you are to blame, because, like I said, there are people in agencies whose job it is to manage that. And I know of one particular agency. I'd love to name them because they can go fuck themselves. I've worked there. I've won awards for them, and the way that they've treated not just me but hundreds of people who applied for a job, and nobody heard anything. And then they promoted internally. And in case anyone, you know, manages to make the links, I'm actually genuinely super happy for the person that got promoted, because they're absolutely brilliant and they are perfect for that job. But the fact that agency didn't see fit to reply to a single one of the hundreds of people that applied, and I include myself in that. I went through the correct channels, even though I've worked there and I've, you know, been very successful working there and won awards for them. I think it just, if you aren't prepared, and you should be by now, this has been going on for probably nearly 2 years, certainly 18 months. Then you're incompetent at best and a complete cunt at worst.
Well, look, I appreciate you not saying the agency's name in case any of us get asked to go and work there again. I could have beeped it out, and I haven't had to use my beep feature yet, which I think we might get into on this one, Steve. I might get a way to use it. I was just telling you offline, and it's probably relevant to this. I just saw an amazing story today, and illustrating the process being broken. And you and I both, I think, admit that. And understand that your likelihood is increased by if you know people there, or if, you know, like you say, that even though some of those experiences are pretty shitty at the moment for all the reasons we've stated, they're all stretched and they've all got their own deep voice on going on. 100% understand all of that. But I still think the way out of the Badlands is probably through network and through your kind of, your not just throwing your CV or hat into the ring. And that's the story today that I saw. I was telling you offline, but it fucking made me laugh. A guy told his story that he'd seen a job being advertised at a place he knew a bunch of people at, and he'd actually worked with some of these people before, so he called them directly, you know, literally in his mobile phone. Like, yeah, perfect. We didn't know you were looking. Let's get you in for an interview. No problem at all. You're perfect for it. You're great. We'll get you in for an interview. Can you do me a favor? Can you just follow the HR thing and just send your CV in via the form and the link that you've seen it, that's alerted you to it, and we'll get you in anyway. So he did that, and within 45 minutes got an automated reply saying, sorry, your application hasn't been successful, and we won't be taking you forward. And he's thinking, well, I just spoke to the guy. And he didn't know which one to believe, and he called his mate back and he was like, no, yeah, fuck that. That's just the thing, the setup thing, so don't worry.
Yeah, the automated AI that scans your bloody application looking for keywords and then bins you.
I think there's a serious point for people to hear that don't be disheartened by the automated response. It's fucking annoying, but really push your network, really push your kind of contacts, because that's how it's going to change. Like his was a brilliant example of knowing the person. He is going to get an interview at that place apparently, but not taking it at face value, those automated responses, even when you get them sometimes, if you can hustle your way to speak to someone, fucking do it, because I'm pretty sure at their end, they'd rather not have to go through 300 CVs. I'm sure they'd write a phone call from someone who goes, hey, remember me? We used to work together. But it just, honestly, it just made me think, well, that's both amazing and a nightmare all in the same go, because I know, as you do, there are people in a less fortunate position. I know you've got your own things going on, and you're managing this time. I'm managing my time, and we're probably much more fortunate than some others. So imagine getting that kind of automated response and just feeling like you've got no hope. I think that's the thing that's crushing people at the moment. You said something on that video about, the notion that this could get so bad we might start seeing people get to real extremes of choices that they make and stuff. And you just think, it can't be that bad, surely. But you're right, it clearly will. Again, I'm fucking rambling now, but I'm a few gin and tonics in. I equally saw another story that was posted by a guy essentially saying, if I don't get a job sharpish, I'm in a really bad place. I'm losing my family, and my wife and I. She's having to go live with her mother. I'm not seeing my son, and he just laid this thing out, and it was just like, fuck me. Like it was just too much on LinkedIn to read, and I'm a bit, I'm becoming a little bit hardened to it, because I think, it's that post, and then someone sat on a yacht in Cannes. I'm a bit like, well, they're the two extremes of the industry at the minute, but
and you know what? There'll be very little, if any, conversation in Cannes about this week. Nobody will be talking about it. They don't need to.
Maybe we should go down there tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe. I think do a dirty protest, but they don't like addressing it, because they can't as a collective, they can't read the room. All they give a shit about is, oh, I've been nominated, yay! And cool, crack on. I'm glad you spent all that money just so you can all go and fluff each other's private parts. But I think ultimately, I find it also interesting. I had a friend of mine last week say to me, "Oh, so and so called me the other day because they were worried about you." And I was like, "Okay, why?" And he's like, "Oh, because they'd seen some of the stuff you've been posting on LinkedIn, and they were worried about you." So, and it kind of it kind of comes across quite bad. And I went, "What do you mean bad?" And they were like, "Well, I mean, it's quite like personal." And I went, and it made me think, like, I keep seeing as well, like, encouraging people to talk, and particularly men to talk openly about how they're feeling. And the minute you fucking do, someone goes, "Oh, I don't think that's a good look." And like, I think it's a perfect look for LinkedIn. I think personally, maybe it's just an age thing. I think that there's enough bullshit on LinkedIn and social media. Ironically, very rarely social at all. But I think there's enough stuff on there to, if you just want to see stuff that doesn't make you think, or doesn't make you, contemplate life and maybe how you're behaving, cool, crack on. But I don't give a fuck. I would rather, call it out, and actually, and it was actually triggered from a conversation I had with my parents. Because, and I know from talking to you and from others, I've had some pretty dark moments certainly in the last 3 or 4 months, where you go so far down the rabbit hole of questioning your own, ability and self-worth. And I said the same thing that I said in that video to my parents. Like, it worries me that, I'm going to see something about someone I know and care about who's done or tried to do something really awful to themselves.
Yeah.
And actually, I said to mom and dad, like, look, I don't want you to worry. I don't think I'm ever be capable of that, but I have thought about it. I have, if I'm being honest, I have fucking thought about it. Because when there's no end in sight, and I've been hopefully quite honest in that I'm in a lucky position that I have a very supportive, loving family around me and friends, and also by virtue of extension, there are, for all of the ghosting, there's also an incredible amount of brilliant people out there. We've connected because of it. There is a real community in the creative industries, and I understand why people who are on the inside, not looking out, are probably trying to just ignore it and just survive themselves. And it's a bit of an awkward cycle.
Yeah, I do think it's probably that more than anything else, rather than just turning a blind eye to it. I think it's probably a fear-driven, where everyone. In one of my conversations with Hassan Kaya, he talked about how you can't look after people unless you've looked after yourself, right? It's impossible. And he talked about you've got to put your oxygen mask on first before you help your family around you. That was his analogy, which makes sense. And I think the fear that is probably real and attached to kind of working at the minute in all industries and all sectors, the state of the nation's pretty not at its best at the moment. And I kind of want to give the benefit of doubt, knowing that probably if I was seeing what is going on out there, you'd be doing everything you could to kind of just stay inside, stay kind of, head down, getting on with your. So I do think it's probably fear-driven as opposed to just a bunch of arseholes. Now, that said, you and I both know the industry, like all industry, there's a lot of arseholes.
There are, yes.
When you touched on how people have reached out to you. I can't begin to tell you just the amount of people that have emailed me via LinkedIn now, just quietly saying, thank you for saying this. Thank you for doing this thing where you chat to this person and it needs saying. I'm a bit like, well, I joke about millions of people. It's not millions of people listening to this. So I'm a bit like, well, more people need to talk about it, because me and you pissed a little bit on a Wednesday night. It's probably not going to solve it, but there's clearly this is a broader thing that is affecting a lot of people. And I'd originally started it with thinking, well, I'll speak to ad guys, and then all the marketing guys came out. I use guys as in people. All the marketing people came out and they're like, oh, I'll do it. And then I've had some fashion folk get in touch with me, and I've had service designers and product designers, and it's broader than.
Oh, the film industry is absolutely. The film industry as well is annihilated at the moment, and not just here, but globally and in the States.
The film industry is essentially a freelance industry, right? No one really works for anyone. They're all freelancers, and they all kind of, and I've seen a bunch of those guys in a similar position. Now, what I'm not going to do, or what you and I having this conversation, we're not going to solve it. What I've determined is that these conversations I'm having with people, they're good for you and I to talk shit. And then what I'm understanding from it is when people listen to it, it gives them a little bit of, oh, thank fuck, it's not just me. It's not just me feeling that or thinking that. There's a lot of solace in hearing someone like you, Steve, who's super senior creative, going through what you're going through, because there's such value in that. So it's important. You've got to keep putting those videos out. You're not a shy guy. We've never worked together, but I know if we did, we'd be pals at work, and those guys who talk shit and call out bullshit at work, because it needs happening. I think one thing I'm hopeful for, and it might be a bit pie in the sky, and it might be the Gin Tonics talking, but when we do get back in, because over a long enough time period, it probably will happen. If you choose to, you can go back in, you'll get back in. We kind of have to go back in and try and help solve it a little bit on the inside, because it's easy to throw rocks from the outside. But I think when we're in there, we've got to kind of,
Well, I'll give you an example, actually. I've already started doing it. So one of my other jobs or hats that I wear is I'm the chief of making stuff sound dope. Making shit sound dope and look good at Lucky Suns, which is a new motorsport F1 entity that I've been involved with for a couple of years. And I spoke to the guy who's going to be heading up all of the HR, and I had a conversation with him, because I was like, I want to make sure that we've got proper procedures in place to make sure that we never ever do what has been happening,
right,
to lots of people I know. So not just like, if we have to set up automated responses to people applying, great, but let's do that. Let's put timers on it. So, if it's a couple of days after the application process, let them know if they've been successful to get through. Like, let's just have a line of communication that is consistent and considered and thoughtful. And he's like, yeah, absolutely, we'll do that. So it's it will absolutely need to change, and I hope that those people that are surviving on the inside don't ever find themselves in this situation, because like you touched on, there's been a lot of people who both commented and replied to me privately from those videos that I've been posting, and some of them have been really hard to read, even harder for the person on the other end to write them, but brutally honest, people in all kinds of states of disarray and discombobulation and a lack of hope, and so I've wherever I can, I've tried to help at least introduce them to people that I know, in the hope that that facilitates a new conversation for them, and maybe it leads to something, because I think you touched on it earlier, or you said it offline, like the only way that we will all get out of this is by other people, and by networking is such a shitty word for what I think is basically conversations. I think it's what I say to students whenever I do stuff, lectures and stuff at universities about networking. It's finding a way to start a conversation with someone that you really want to talk to, and then maintaining that conversation. And it's easy to stop that when you've got a job and you head down. But I learned from running Plan B Studio. You have to maintain those conversations and those relationships, and because when you need them, or if you really need them, you don't want to be trying to restart those conversations and go, oh no, I haven't spoken to you for 10 years, but hi. It's got to be constant, and that means, even though you've got a full-time job and a family or whatever it is in your private life, you have to do that as well. And ideally not just on bloody LinkedIn, like going in real life and seeing people and meeting them for coffees or beers or whatever it is, like the good old days, which were good, when you actually just went and met people, rather than having to just do it on a Teams call. It's pivotal to ensuring that you don't have to start afresh every time that you're in need.
Yeah, look, a couple of things that a little nice segue into announcing. I'm going to introduce a bit of a Badlands meetup in the real world, because I've done enough of these now where a bunch of us could all get together and talk shit together, and you never know what connections will come out of it. It's like, I've talked to
Exactly.
this person. It's like, you would benefit talking to Lucas Bergman's the CMO, Steve, because you've touched on some things that he touched on. So those sort of connections I'm going to kind of bring into fruition in the real world. So
sounds like you should start an agency called Badlands.
Well, if I essentially now have an entire roster of resources, and I actually have some CMOs and heads of marketing and head of brand on the other side of the fence. It's just none of us have. They don't have any money to. That have a brand
clients
to give us a work for. Yeah, but there's something I'll talk to you about slightly offline, which could be quite funny. So you're right. The people are at the heart of this, and it's kind of why I started it in the first place, because you kind of feel like a bit of a prick posting shit on LinkedIn when it's just random, like no one gives a fuck, like no one cares, just no one cares.
Yeah.
But then what I've actually found out is it's not strictly true. People do care. So I think you've got to keep showing up. You've got to keep putting yourself out there. I know you're doing a lot of mentoring in kind of inverted commas of other people in the Badlands that you're trying to help get out of there and stuff, because, that kind of pay it forward thing I do strongly believe in. Again, my chat with Lucas Bergman's the CMO, he talked about the job, your next job probably you'll create by your contact and talking, and you'll
Absolutely.
create it with someone as opposed to sat waiting for it to be magically appearing to you. So I think anyone listening, I can't stress enough, like, talk, harass, hustle, kind of get yourself out there, go to those bullshit things you don't want to go to, because it's better than kind of sitting on your ass waiting for it to happen. Those days have gone. You kind of need to,
you got to be politely persistent.
Yeah.
I had a call with a graduate last night, who's just finished a design degree, and she realized halfway through a degree she wanted to do strategy. And as far as I know, I don't know. I don't think there is. I don't know if there's a degree in brand strategy. There might be. I'm sorry if there is, and I've just dismissed it. But so I've connected her today with some brilliant people that I know and love and respect, and just because I said, like, I actually can't help you on that, but I can help introduce you to people that can tell you how they got into it, and you don't know where that.
Yes, it goes such
Yeah,
a long
absolutely.
way.
Yeah, and I think I just had a graduate working with me on this small project that I won a couple of weeks ago, which hasn't got much budget. In fact, my wife said to me, "Why are you paying someone out of like that minuscule budget?" I was like, "Because it's a really good first step for her, and she's really good, and I actually want to genuinely see what she comes up with, because I think she's actually a fucking brilliant talent, and why not? It's
Believe me, if I could hire an account exec to help me do this Badlands stuff, I would, because I'm way out of my depth when it comes to organizing the meetings and timings and
yeah."
and all that shit.
But I think I've also been saying to people, anyone that will listen, look, wherever you can, whenever you can, try and get actual real face time with people.
Yeah.
Go and meet them. Where even if it means you've got to travel a little bit, go and speak to them. If you can get in front of them for 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes or an hour, like you'll reap the rewards from that, because yes, Zoom and Teams and everything is, inverted commas, great, sarcastic. It isn't it isn't it isn't easy to get across your personality, and not to say that if you meet everyone in real life you're going to get on with everybody. We know you're not, but go and meet people. In fact, that job that I won came from me sending. I started writing letters, so I bought some A5 paper. I bought a pen, which I don't normally use. In fact, I ended up just using pencil, writing really short letters because my handwriting is terrible. I got a little rubber stamp with my name, my email address, and my mobile number. Didn't have enough money to get a second rubber stamp to get my address on there. Stamped it, folded it, put it in an A6 envelope, and I didn't have all of the people's addresses, so I asked them, "Can I get your postal address? Don't worry, I'm not sending anything rude." And just sent a shitload of those out, second class post stamp on it. And I got several fucking coffees and met up with people, and I met up with the lovely Alex, and we had lunch, and bless him, he bought me lunch even though I wasn't expecting him to, and actually it was his contact that he had a meeting with, who was looking for someone to do the work that I'm now doing, and that came from that.
Yeah.
And I nearly didn't go to meet him because I thought, do you know what, I've got to go to town, that's probably 15 quid on the train by the time I've got there and come back, and shit lunch, I hope we can go somewhere cheap. I don't want to say, can we go somewhere cheap? But it was lovely. I haven't seen him for years, and so it helps to push yourself and get out there and try and be politely persistent.
No, it's great advice. I mean, I do usually ask my guests, fucking guests, what am I talking? Like I'm fucking Jonathan Ross, my guests. If I'm talking to, major advice, or because what's clear is people listening to this, they were designed. I naively thought, well, recruiters will listen to this and hear that this person's free and they'll hire them tomorrow. What I'm finding is the people listening to this are in this position like us, and it's bringing a little bit of comfort to them. And so for that, I'm fine with. What I can say is one of my early guests has since landed a role. He won't quite attribute it to doing the podcast yet, but I'll get that out of him. I'll get him to do a reprise episode just to send the value of it through the roof. The fuck was I talking
But
about?
it definitely does help, and I know
Just chatting.
every
Yeah, yeah,
message, every message that I've received or every comment. I don't think I got any negative comments on that video, although I imagine there's people voyeurs who are probably like, oh, he's a fucking idiot. But everybody that messaged me was in some way, shape, or form saying, I'm really like, thank you, like,
yeah, yeah.
because it's I've thought it was me or just me, and so I know that it's helped. I use that word very loosely, but I know that when I've seen stuff, and there isn't much of it out there, but when I have seen stuff, I'm like, oh, actually, fucking hell, like it. Okay, well, if they're struggling, then I know it's not just me, and so it does help only in the sense that you can appreciate that. Okay, well, yeah, there's other people that are in the same boat as me. I mean, it doesn't help because you're like, well, if we're all fucked, then I don't know what the answer is, but it's there's a problem shared is a problem halved, right? So
Yeah, and clearly that me and you talking on a Wednesday night, it's not doesn't solve the job thing tomorrow. It doesn't solve the financial side of this thing that really impacts people. But you kind of feel it just gives you a little bit of energy because that's what it takes, right? You need a little bit of energy every day just to kind of keep going, keep going. I've
yeah,
stolen this from someone, and I don't know where it's stolen from. And I admit that I've heard it and stolen it from someone, but I can't attribute it to someone. But this kind of idea of take it professionally, not personally, is kind of it saved me a little bit. That when I heard it, I was like, "Fuck yeah, this is the state of the profession and the state of the country and the state of the all of these things that are way bigger than one's ability." But I think it's really important for people to understand that there's a couple of options, right? You can keep hammering away at trying to get back in. You can hammer away, try and get back in whilst looking at other options, which I think is maybe sensible. Or you can use this time to go, you know what, that was great. I was lucky to work in advertising, in my case, for 25 years with some amazing people, went all over the world. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to go and do X, whatever that is. But I think use the time wisely to either hone your craft, hone your kind of, like you say, build up these networks again, or look into alternative things. I think one thing I'm painfully aware of is I'm not old, but it seems like I'm old in the ad world.
yeah.
And it occurred to me the other week that no one ever retires from advertising. You never go to a retirement party, an ad agency, or
No,
there's never a retirement. Oh, John's retiring. Oh, is he? Yeah, great. You never go to those. So there's maybe something in the
I think
water as well that is a little bit, you know, I
I think
think
I think you just die in the stationery office or stationery cupboard, don't you? That's
maybe, but someone feeds you into the printer that doesn't work ever when you need it.
call me a dreamer, but that's
Yeah,
that's what I'm
it's just
banking on.
politely taken out the back and just shot. It might be. It's just the mafia.
Yes,
You never leave.
that has happened. I've seen it.
Um, just I think because I could happily talk all night, but as we start to wrap up, because we do want people to listen to this, and no one really wants 2, 3 fucking hours. It's not Joe Rogan, right? It's not a 3 hour episode. Um, besides the things you talked about, actually, one thing I wanted to ask you, like, is there a dream? Like, I'm trying to manifest these things. I've had someone want to work at the PGA. Someone wants to work at Virgin Airways. So I'm trying to use, if we manifest it and talk about it, and then I can put some keywords out, and that might be it, right? You might get a call from X tomorrow. You never
There you
know.
go.
Is there an ideal role, sector, thing that you'd love to do moving forwards, given everything you know and everywhere you've worked?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of doing it at the moment. I mentioned Lucky Sons earlier, but we are currently in pursuit to purchase a Formula One team, which is as much fun as it sounds. We're also edging ever nearer to buying a Formula E team. Hopefully, in the next couple of months, we can get that deal done. With lots of big plans to expand into as a group into other formulas like World Endurance. If I get my way, I want us to be in IMSA, which is the American version of World Endurance championships. I'd love to be in IndyCar. I'd love to do NASCAR. I'd love to do all of it because motorsport's always been a massive passion of mine. Right. And for the last 18 months, I've effectively been the chief creative officer for a new Formula One motorsport entity called Lucky Sons, and so kind of have that as a dangled carrot, which if the minute we get a deal done, everything starts.
I was going to say, surely the dream is that you get paid for that.
Well, I will get paid for that, but at the moment we don't. We have none of us.
So that would be the. I wanted to be clear because I didn't want the listener to this. They're very discerning, and then all of a sudden, Steve, they didn't want to be hoodwinked and go, "Well, this prick's been working for a Formula One company for."
Oh no, I've been working for free. On the Lucky Sons project, and actually, I know you know that, but everyone that's involved in the project has been doing it for free because
that's what it takes, right? To get your passion.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know it's very frustrating for everyone that's involved in the project because it doesn't move at the pace we want it to. Ironically, given that it's supposed to be Formula One, but I know what we will be able to deliver when we start doing that work, and that has helped me. In fact, having that during the last 9 months has been my kind of crutch, and a bit like cat on a hot tin roof. His crutch was alcohol and a physical crutch. Mine's been Lucky Sons. It's the thing that's propped me up because it's meant I've been able to bury myself in that and actually do, lots of really fun stuff. It teaches you. Most of the projects I've ever done with Plan B Studio, in varying degrees, most of the creativity is being creative with budgets that, aren't in any way, shape or form the typical kind of budgets you'd expect for that kind of project. So you learn to be incredibly resourceful and creative. And so I've just been applying that to Lucky Sons. And so that would be my dream job, to be paid for that. But, watch this space, as they say. I've been saying that for 18 months as well. So,
well, as I explained to my gorgeous, amazing wife the other day when she was like, this podcast thing, I was like, well, I heard that Joe Rogan, it took him 5 years to break even. It didn't make any money for the first 5 years of him doing the podcast, but then eventually signed $100 million deal with Spotify. So you never know.
Yeah.
Which went 5 years.
Yeah. But look, I don't think you're batshit crazy enough though to necessarily get to Joe Rogan level.
No, I have no ambition to, but I think the point is, you got to make shit happen, right? And like you say, hustling and that kind of persistence is key to it. I think it goes without saying that, Steve, the millions of listeners, you are open to projects, freelance. You could start tomorrow, right? It wouldn't. You can.
Yeah, I'm open to ideas.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, sweet. I think the final question I'd have for you, Steve, given some of your honesty and openness, you want to shout out any heroes, anybody who's just been a rock? And because we've talked about the people who've been arseholes and pricks, so I think it's time to end on a positive note and shout out to anybody who's been a legend for you.
I think that there's too many that I could mention, but apart from my immediate family and Emma, my wife, and I'd say my kids, but they're just kids. But I think the industry, Alex, who I mentioned, who runs This Is Soon. Thankfully, without him putting me in touch with this company, I wouldn't have been doing that. And Laura, Fern, and Hattie that set up Uncharted Studio that I am kind of involved with as well. They're just a lovely bunch of people who've got a great army of pirates in a WhatsApp group, all waiting for the next project to land to work on. I think lots of my friends, and they will know who they are if they're actually listening to this. But there's lots of people that are incredibly kind and will go the extra mile, and I've been incredibly fortunate to kind of surround myself with people that I can rely on for that. So for all of the there's a lot of ghosting and there's a lot of people. Yes, there is, but they don't always know me. I don't always know them as well as I do other people. And I think there is a wonderful community spirit within the creative industry. It's just sadly at the moment a lot of them are in a similar position. So, but I think to anyone listening that's young or similar age or older, you just gotta kind of lean into those relationships a little bit, and even if it's just to bend their ear a little bit, and ring people on the telephone. It's the easiest way to get hold of people half the time. It scares the shit out of them because their phone never rings. So,
Yeah, most people think someone's died if the phone rings. So they definitely pick it up.
Yeah.
You'll get through to someone for sure.
Exactly. So, but thanks for having me and thanks for inviting me.
No, look, Steve, it's been an utter pleasure. I've loved talking to you offline, and we do know some of the same people, haven't worked at some of these same agencies. So it's been an utter pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing, and keep putting those videos out, because it helped me when I saw yours, and it's definitely helping a lot of other people. And it doesn't solve the problem, but it just eases a little bit of the burden that is on a lot of people across a number of areas within our crazy industry. So, Steve, can't thank you enough, mate. And enjoy the evening, enjoy your beer, and let's keep going on. And I'll see you at the Badlands meetup for sure.
As my wife would say, chin up, tits out.
And there we have my title to the next episode.
There you go.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers, buddy. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.